Landlords in Oakland, California, who are fighting the case to force them to pay relocation fees, lost in the Supreme Court. I'm Tony, and this is Real Estate Investing and Landlord News. All right, so I have some bad news for landlords out there, and this has to do with a video I made a little while back about a couple of landlords in the city of Oakland, California, who are fighting against the city's policy that forces landlords to pay relocation fees even if the owner of the property wants to move back into it. So in this case, I believe that the owners of the property actually they lived in Oakland, they lived in the property, and they got reassigned as part of their military duties, right? And so they were gone for a few years, but when they finally were able to come back, they needed to get the tenant out of the property. But the tenant had recently passed a new law since, that said that, hey, landlords have to pay these relocation fees. And the relocation fees are a lot of money, okay? We're talking about, I think it was like $6,500 or $7,000 to get these people out of their house. So, doing the responsible thing, these landlords, they went ahead and paid these people these relocation fees, but they sued, okay? And they lost in federal court, they lost in appeals court, and now they've lost in the Supreme Court. And what my hope was, and like I said in the other video I made, my hope was that, hey, these relocation fee laws that these cities are passing, they would get completely thrown out because, the Supreme Court's more conservative now. So it kind of bothers me that this happened, okay? So before I get into the article, go ahead, hit the like and subscribe button. Maybe leave a comment down below. Let me know what you think. What do you think of cities that are requiring landlords to pay relocation fees to tenants for them to move out? Okay, what do you think of that? Okay, imagine every time that you had, you had a tenant turnover, or any time you wanted to empty out your property to do rehabilitation or to sell the property or whatever, right? You had to pay a tenant tens of thousands of dollars. I mean, it's a joke, okay? And the logic that the far left politicians in a place like Oakland thought was, well, the tenants are all super poor and the landlords are super rich and greedy, right? Well, in the case in this story, the tenants were actually very highly paid tech workers, right? And the landlords, they were small landlords with a single property who worked for the military. You tell me who gets paid more, high paid tech workers or military people, okay? It's pretty obvious. So, the landlord, the one who is, makes less money, actually got screwed over. And well, there's no law that actually looks at, hey, well, what is the income of the tenant? Does the tenant actually need this? No. Instead, they just assume that, hey, all tenants are poor, all tenants are innocent victims, and then they take away the landlord's property rights. Well, hey, this is an awful situation, and God, I can't believe it happened. But let's get into the article and see what it says. And it's coming from sfist.com, and it says, Supreme Court rejects Oakland couple's case opposing tenant payouts and win for tenant rights. Yeah, it might be a win for tenant rights, right? But, like I say about every single ruling that goes against what landlords are trying to do, right? When you pass a law like this, when you basically say, hey, landlords have to pay out tens of thousands of dollars if they want to rent their single family house, well, do you know what that's going to do to landlords, okay? It's going to do exactly what you expect. It's going to tell them, hey, don't rent out your house, right? Don't rent it. Simply put, you're going to get screwed if you do rent it. So instead, sell it to owner-occupants or just leave it empty. Reduce the number of rental units available. And then you see that in a place like Oakland or in the Bay Area, hey, there's this huge rental shortage. I wonder why there aren't enough rental units. Well, because you're discouraging people from wanting to be landlords, okay? So let's get into this article. The U.S. Supreme Court has denied review for a case brought by an Oakland couple regarding their owner move-in eviction, in a blow to all landlords who want to legally challenge city requirements regarding tenant buyouts and no-fault evictions. The real estate lobby and landlords in Bay Area cities that have strict rules about tenant relocation payments were closely watching this case, which dates back to 2018. Landlords Lindsay and Sharon Ballinger, who were both enlisted in the Air Force when they moved out of their Oakland home in order to be transferred to Washington, D.C. in 2015, came back in late 2018 to find that they could not just politely ask their tenants to leave. They were required under Oakland law to pay $6,582 in relocation expenses to the tenants, which they paid, but then they sued the city over what they considered illegal government seizure of property. And that is basically what this is. This is an illegal seizure of property. I don't see what what they're possibly thinking is. Okay, they basically said, you can't evict this tenant unless you pay this money. I mean, think about it. You can't evict this tenant unless you pay this money. I can't evict the tenant unless I pay the money. Yeah, you cannot evict. So either you pay the money, the $6,582, or you can't evict the tenant. That is, you're either taking my property in terms of the money, or you're taking my property in terms of the house. Okay? Either way, any moron can see that this is obviously an unconstitutional taking of private property for public use without just compensation. Okay? You're paying a tenant to leave. Since when has that been a rule ever? Okay? Now, it makes no sense. It makes no sense whatsoever. Your contract was for X term. They pay, you rent in order to stay in the property from, let's say a year, right? Well, for that year, they have, the use of that property. And then when that year is over, they no longer have the use of that property. So my guess is that these tenants had, they were on a month-to-month lease. Well, you give your appropriate notice, and when that month is up or whenever that time period is up, then they got to go, and they shouldn't get any benefits or bonus or awards or prize or, cash payouts. That's ridiculous. That's so stupid. Okay. I mean, I can't believe that this sort of thing is happening. They're like, oh, but the housing market is tight and it costs a lot of money. Yeah, that's just the way it is. And when you go to that next landlord, why are you paying the landlord with my money? Okay? Stupid. I just don't get it. I don't understand it. And, this is another reason why I say don't invest in this sort of place. Libertarian activists nationwide and real estate interests saw this as a good case to run up the chain in the hopes of invalidating pro-tenant laws like this, the likes of which have been on the books in San Francisco, Berkeley, San Jose, and LA for years. But Oakland's law only took effect in 2018. The libertarian-leaning Pacific Legal Foundation took on the case. In 2019, a federal judge ruled against the Ballingers, saying the Oakland City Council's legislative purpose to promote community stability and help tenants avoid displacement and high moving costs was a legitimate one. See, my problem with that is, right, their legislative purpose is to promote community stability. So if they pass legislation, no matter what it says in it, to promote community stability and avoid displacement, right, that means that theoretically, according to this federal judge, they could just take your property or just tell you have to pay for the property, and the tenant doesn't ever have to pay rent. Oh wait, they did do that. Remember the eviction moratorium? You see what I'm talking about here? This is government overreach. This is, ridiculous amounts of bureaucracy, and this is socialism all combined into one thing, okay? So that's why we have to fight this garbage. They appealed the case to the Ninth Circuit, which ruled against them in February. The Ballingers voluntarily chose to lease their property and to evict under the ordinance, conduct that required them to pay the relocation fee, wrote Trump-appointed Judge Ryan Nelson in the 3-0 ruling. Nelson further wrote that the Oakland Ordinance was not an illegal government seizure of money or property, but was a standard regulation of the landlord-tenant relationship, which the Supreme Court had consistently upheld. Cities are permitted to charge taxes and fees to property owners for various reasons, including for things like hazardous waste cleanup. Well, by that logic, why wouldn't the city just be able to say, hey, we're going to, just charge every single time that, a tenant leaves, we're going to charge every landlord $100,000. More than more than they ever paid in rent. We're just going to say, hey, landlords have to pay $100,000. Landlords can't charge any rent. According to their ruling, right, the city can just basically charge any fee, any amount that they want to without any regard at all to the landlord, to their property rights, to anything. So that is a ridiculous assumption in my opinion. But you know what? Here's the thing, right? All of this, what it comes down to is the fact that we have to continue to fight, okay? We have to not put up with this garbage. And, I am glad that landlords are backing out of places like this. I am glad. I want there to be a rent crisis there. I don't want there to be enough rentals for all the people. I want them to be overrun with the homelessness that they caused, okay? I want the problems to be so severe for them that they finally have to accept that, hey, this isn't working. What we're doing isn't working. And, the people, they should leave. The people should leave. I read that for the 2020 census, they actually lost population in that area for the first time in a long time, and that should show you that, hey, extremely expensive housing costs, over-regulation, out of control crime, homelessness, ridiculous bureaucracy, all of that, it doesn't work. It doesn't work. It will never work. And the working class people are leaving. The people who aren't, who are lower income, the people who aren't super rich, they can't afford to live there. And they don't want to live there because you've turned it into a hellhole.